If you're feeling depressed, shameful, anxious, angry, hopeless, or stuck in life, you're probably trying to have your ego do work your soul should be doing. Our soul is much more powerful at setting up opportunities in our life, but how do we align with these greater opportunities in our lives? How can we feel more satisfaction, purpose, happiness, and joy in our lives? All of the necessary conditions exist in your life right now for you to feel capable of achieving everything you want and have gratitude for every step along the way. What have you been yearning for, working for, dreaming about? What both excites you and terrifies you at the same time? What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? All these things are possible once we connect with our spiritual selves and allow these energies to flow through our bodies. I've been studying spirituality for 20 years now. These are some basic concepts that I've woven together to form this mindset that helps me understand both my highs and my lows, both from why I suffer through the bad things and why the good things happen as well. This mindset helps me be aware and connect with my spiritual self and stay in the right frame of mind to understand what's actually happening to me in my life and bring meaning to that. When dancing with a partner, whether it's swing dancing, salsa, blues, tango, whatever, there's generally one lead and a follow. The lead does not control nor force, but rather offers shape and suddenly guides. And the follow responds to the lead's shape, matching speed, emotion, intensity. Every move is a statement and a question. Every move is a response and a suggestion. There's a constant interaction and building off each other's movements. Their tension is built up and released. All of this is happening with the awareness and context of the music and the other dancers on the dance floor, while still dancing in their own little reality. The ego and the soul have a similar relationship. When the ego surrenders to the soul, when the soul can then lead the ego to and through most anything. The soul has the greater advantage point to know which is the quicker path or the better way, and it's setting up opportunities for us so that we know to go to the right places. We just need to learn how to listen. Let's take a step back now and ask a very basic question. What is spirituality? Brené Brown is a shame researcher, and she's quoted saying, "Spirituality is recognizing and celebrating that we are all inextricably connected to each other by a power greater than all of us, and our connection to that power and to one another is grounded in love and compassion. Practicing spirituality brings a sense of perspective, meaning, and purpose to our lives." I kind of like the simplicity of Dr. K's definition from Healthy Gamers, which spirituality is essentially the study of how to live life. Spirituality is the knowledge and wisdom to create an enjoyable and meaningful life. There seems to be 4 fundamental aspects to spirituality: experience, understanding, meaning, and the act of creation. You have to experience something before you can understand it. And once you start to understand it, you realize the things in your reality that you've experienced that bring you meaning. And once you start to really understand something and you have meaning, you're thrust into action. And every action is a creative act. How can we build this understanding of ourselves and move into meaningful action? Dr. Conti says the structure of self involves uncovering the unconscious mind and the defense mechanisms that shape our thoughts and our behaviors. The function of self, on the other hand, is about taking action and engaging with the world. It starts with self-awareness and taking responsibility for our own mental health. Same with our spiritual health and our physical health. Just like our physical body has needs like food, water, shelter, safety, belonging, our spiritual self has needs as well. Now, spirituality is often seen as being non-physical and by definition immeasurable, when that simply isn't true. Because all measurement devices were created and calibrated by humans. So essentially, if we can experience it and we can feel it, it can be measured. Dr. Conti says that the structure and function of self enables more agency and gratitude in our lives. The more agency and gratitude we feel, the more content and happiness and peace we feel. It's kind of like an operator's manual. The more we actually understand how our body works and what we're designed to do, the more that we can actually operate to our specifications and, not be putting forks in the microwave. What is the structure and function of our spiritual selves, and how will it create more agency and gratitude in our lives? David Hawkins was a scientific researcher and spiritual teacher who wrote the books Power vs. Force and Letting Go: The Pathway of Surrender. So he basically talks in a way that there are two different sets of physics operating at the same time. Essentially, ego-based physical physics that is more or less what science and physics focuses on. And then you have nonlinear physics, which is a lot of what quantum physics and string theory and all those things are trying to figure out, which is the nonlinear reality and the nonlinear physics. So the ego is mainly focused on Newtonian physics in that sense. What is right here in our reality that we have to deal with? What levers and switches can I pull? What kind of work can I do and physically push around to get stuff done? But then you have your soul, which is essentially, it has a much greater vantage point onto reality and its ability to see and communicate and orchestrate between all the other conscious elements of reality. Essentially, you have the ego, as I define it, is our physical body and our emotions and the chemicals and everything that builds up there. You have your soul, which is can be very complex, but for more or less, it's all of our spiritual anatomy, how we experience and interact with it between more or less the non-physical and the physical and where they overlap, which is kind of what I'm addressing in this video. Both sets of these physics are happening at the same time, so you have to recognize when you have to be able to do the thing that's right in front of you, but also at the same time is allow and set up for these sets of randomization and other things for spirit to be able to create things around the corner. Because you plant the seed, but then source and the rest of the universe essentially makes the plant and does everything else. You know, you got to water it and such too, but you can't make the seed grow. It has to grow. You can create the conditions for it, but it has to grow on its own. Source energy is infinite and it's eternal. So it's coming all the time. It's a steady stream of energy that we get to be having flow through us, where the finite energies are ones that are based off of linear reality, that food, water, shelter, safety, all these things are limited resources. When you're trying to control and create out of those limited resources, you get very limited stuff because you're only trying to create of what's there. But when you're creating with source and you're creating from your higher creative potential and your higher moral potential, you are actually creating more that was there before. You're creating more than the sum of its parts. And that's the difference between, say, doing good business where you're actually creating more value than was there before, rather than just middlemen getting a commission off of something and not really doing any work. Our bodies require air, water, and food flowing through our bodies, but they also require God source consciousness energy flowing through our bodies too. For your Christians out there, that's more like saying how much Holy Spirit is within us at one time. Our emotions are telling us how much of this consciousness energy is flowing through us at any given time. And the higher your emotional state, the more you are in alignment with where you should be on your karmic path, or aligning with your current karmic lesson that you're learning. What prevents this energy from flowing through us? Good and bad are mainly concepts of the ego that we've derived. And they're based around survival, because we say, having this apple is good, not having the apple is bad because I need that apple for food. But we don't always have the greater understanding of the greater context of reality. The more consciousness energy that is in a situation, the more ability and opportunity for those things that the ego perceives as good to happen. It is the higher source consciousness energy that has the perspective to actually know which is the better one. And so often we just have to use our intuition to feel that better option. The more consciousness energy is flowing through us, just in the same way that if we're upset and angry, that we're not thinking clearly, that we're not able to perceive and be able to identify and connect with these other options, or to decide them or act upon them. We've developed a lot of these strategies for survival because when we're young, we needed to get our needs met. And our parents were essentially the only people there to get our needs met. If they weren't there to get our needs met, we came up with various strategies for trying to get them met. When we can't rely on the people around us and we don't develop those basic skills of communication of how to actually connect with other people and ask for our needs to get met and work together, then we end up creating all of these various survival strategies that don't actually help us. We create these narratives for how reality works that just aren't true. A lot of this process is identifying those false behaviors and those fear-based strategies for survival that just don't actually aid in our survival, and being able to release those by accepting them, accepting those parts of ourselves and not shaming or laughing at them, but realizing that, oh, these are parts of ourselves that need connection, and go connect with those parts of ourselves. They need to be heard, because unheard voices will keep speaking louder until they're heard. It is your ego's job to advocate for your survival needs, and that's what it's always doing. So all of your fears and your anxieties and such, they're all trying to tell you that certain things are important to you that you're not meeting. All fear-based emotions are essentially lies that you've been telling yourself about how you're not able to do or achieve or move towards the things that you want. Yeah, you can't become a professional athlete overnight, but you can work towards it day by day. The belief and the feeling and the enjoyment for every step along the journey is where we're learning all those lessons. Our emotions are a guidance system. They're essentially like a GPS, because they're telling us essentially where you are and where you want to be and your orientation to that. Obviously, every time you go type in a GPS for different stuff, or a different time, it's going to be a different result. If you're not oriented right and you're going the wrong direction, you see that little guy on like Mario Kart where he's telling you to go the wrong way around, turn around. And that's all negative emotions are. Turn around. You're just facing the wrong direction. You need to be going in a different direction. And your energies and the way you're thinking about stuff is not actually aligned with who you are. And that separation and that disconnect from you not being in contact with your body or in contact with your soul or your spirit body, that disconnection hurts. And that's why so many people are hurting today, because they're not listening to the feelings their bodies are telling them or their souls telling them, and they're just downplaying them and ignoring them and washing them away. We want to look at this scale of consciousness chart. We want to recognize that this is first a logarithmic scale. Every time it increases one on the scale, it's actually a tenfold increase. Everything on the top side of this chart is actually way, way more powerful than everything on the bottom side. So you'll see that there's this scale of emotions. If I'm emotionally headed in the right direction, emotionally moving up the scale while thinking about this subject, I know that I'm figuring that out. The emotional association of 199 on this chart and below is essentially where fear is dominating our thinking and our patterning. It's limiting our mindset and our ability to perceive options in our reality. Fear is always trying to protect us, and it's always trying to protect itself. So once you realize what it's trying to protect and what that hurt part of yourself and that unmet need is, then that fear can start to go off duty, because it no longer has to constantly advocate for yourself. At the level of 200 is essentially where love starts to overpower the fear, and that's where we feel that breakthrough point of feeling courage or bravery. Fear's still there, but the love is now taken over. The love is now more powerful than the fear, and that's the love of source consciousness flowing through us, allowing more opportunities in our lives to be able to connect. Fear speaks in I can't, you can't. It always thinks in terms of limitations. Spirit and soul always speaks in terms of I can, or let's figure it out. It's always curious. It's always asking questions. It's always trying to figure something out because it knows there's always something more to figure out. Fear is finite in its way of thinking. It thinks, I already have everything figured out. I just need to act on it. Everything is already the way it is, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's a fatalist mentality, and essentially that like the ego thinks that reality happens to them, where the soul knows that it's creating. And it's not creating in a sense that like I gotta just wish whatever I want out of thin air, but it's the thing of recognizing how little magic happens a little bit at a time, and a little bit of persistence goes a long way. So much about spirituality is developing an understanding and a relationship with the greater aspects of our reality and ourselves. How can we develop this relationship with our ego and our soul? How can we discover these parts of ourselves and nurture them? It can be hard nowadays with social media bombarding us all the time, telling us what's good and bad and how we need to think about a whole bunch of different subjects, and people are disagreeing all the time. When I say you want to be a good person, it's sometimes hard to figure that out nowadays. We come back to the classic adages of treat other people as you would like to be treated or as they would like to be treated, which is a great place to start. But a lot of it goes into building more understanding of yourself. You start to realize that other people are going through similar emotional journeys, and you can find those connections. And these moral principles, they're not just good ideas, they're actual literal consciousness flowing through us that allows us to connect in literally with more opportunities that weren't there before. We got to create them in ways that weren't there before, because if I see something that's possible and somebody else doesn't, I can introduce that possibility to them and raise their consciousness up to be able to, hey, let's look around this corner. Oh, look, here's where the broken thing is. Maybe we can go fix that. And then we can get on the same page about actually fixing the things that are affecting us rather than arguing about stuff that isn't as meaningful. Being able to raise our consciousness and being able to be a good person is exactly how we embody those higher frequencies, but also how we be a better person. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Focus your energies on where you have the most impact, which starts with yourself. Now, I like to ask myself often, is this on my path or is this next to my path? Because I know if it's on my path, spirit and karma has put it there as a way for me to learn for it. The obstacle is the path. The obstacle is a karmic opportunity for us to learn and grow from. Even if it's not from this lifetime, it's still put there as a way for us to learn from it and to better ourselves, to better understand what other people are going through and what kind of compassion we can have for that and how we can make better decisions and be more wise and more aware of the people around us. Our body is always giving us feedback of our internal and external states of reality. So we want to be conscious of how our body feels and what kind of states it could be in a physical sense of just where food is, where blood is, where various things like that are, which are not emotional states. Then we also have external states of reality, which hot, cold things and stuff happen to us, which influence our emotional states, but again, are not our emotional states. Now, we recognize how our body states influence our emotional states, and our emotional states influence our body states. Obviously, we have emotional chemicals that flow through our bodies, which are the emotional manifestations of those energies in our body, which another way you could say embodying those frequencies in your body is also making those chemicals in your body. We want to be able to listen to all of these parts of ourselves because they're all important for us, because they're all important information that helps us know who we are. And we don't want to separate ourselves from those because that's where a lot of the pain comes from. Pain is often caused by our needs not getting met. Our needs are pretty well summarized by Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The key thing to remember here is that the higher level needs are much harder to get met without the lower level needs getting met. We want to be able to explore the pain and separate the feeling of the need from the fear of that need not being met. Once you start to identify your needs and your fears around those needs, you'll start to build more trust with your soul and your ego. Your ego will start to release much easier once it starts to be able to trust more and more. So I ask you, what song do you want to create in your lifetime? What kind of song would you dance to for the rest of your life?